Good evening, taxpayers, Mr. Chairman, rest of the board, invited guests, everybody, Romans, countrymen. The assessor's budget is a rather mundane budget. I'll take any questions. There are no personnel changes for this year. There were a couple of service increases, and the reason for those increases with regard to appeals, we did not want to come to the FinCom in the middle of the year for, a few $1,000 transfer, and we have a few appeals that are ongoing that are going to come to a head this year. Appellate tax board appeals, yes.
Okay. So, are any questions from the committee? Want to ask something? Oh, geez, come on. One.
The line, the junior data collectors, there's, the increase is in there for over $3,000 on that, which is roughly 18%. I was
Yes.
just curious as to what that was
Yeah,
about.
that's a good question. Last year, we increased the staff from one part-time data collector to two. And we needed to increase the amount of the, she's not being paid anymore, but there'll be more hours.
It's
from
still,
last
still
fiscal
one
year to
person, though,
this
because
fiscal
it
year.
says one employee, there's still one employee, though?
Yes, yes,
So there's not an increase in people, then?
correct.
Okay, it's an increase in hours.
Yes. And basically, just so everyone would know, we do in-house inspections, meaning we don't farm it out to a vendor. And we do it in a very cost-effective manner because we have two part-time people, non-benefited, very professional, with experience, that are working, at most 19 hours per week. And as you know, in the winter, they can't work as many hours because of the weather conditions. So some years they work more hours, other years they work less. But we have two people, non-benefited, and it's very cost-effective compared to what some other towns do.
You have how many junior data collectors, then?
We have a senior data collector and a junior data collector.
Okay. The junior data collector line is increased, that because the hours are increased for that person?
Yes.
What is the hour increase for that person?
Well, hours worked because she was hired in the middle of the year last year.
Okay.
It's 19 hours. They
But
both
still
could-
same amount of hours every week, except she was hired halfway through the year.
Right, but it varies greatly because they're not paid for holidays. They don't get vacation days. They don't get sick days. If it snows, if it's pouring rain, they do not work and are not paid.
All right, thank you. I just
Yep,
had a question
yep,
on that,
yep.
the increase. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else who has? Mr. Laurie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have, I'm more curious, not about the dollars represented on the page here, but just in terms of the information that you are able to look at over, let's say, over time. Can you share any insights that you've noticed over the last, say, 3-year trend of what's happening in Stoughton? Could you share any nuggets of, this seems to be what I'm noticing about people coming and going, about values of property, just in general? Do you see anything that caught your attention about things going on in town?
Specific to this locale?
No, just specific to Stoughton, but in terms of how you see, do you see growth in the town? Do you see decline? Do you see anything that strikes you as interesting in terms of the data that you're going over as you collect it?
Yeah, a couple of years ago at the classification hearing, I brought this up, but I could go on a long time, but I'll be very curt. We've had considerably more, an uptick in residential growth more than commercial growth. And that's a bit troubling to me in a split-rate community, because you want to have a balance as much as possible. It's good that we've had residential growth, but a lot of our CIP growth, meaning commercial, industrial, and personal property, has been, for the most part, personal property, which is out of my hands, the public utility values that are valued by the state. So, for instance, in the growth last year, about almost, probably 45% of our growth was personal property growth. We had $600,000 in tax dollars, and probably 280, I don't have the figures because you caught me off guard here with that question, but I'd say it was about 280 of the 600 and something thousand was just personal property growth. And the public doesn't understand personal property. It's a tangible asset, but it's not like real estate. A lot of people own homes, so they understand real estate, but personal property is a different animal altogether. So basically, I've seen residential values coming back, commercial values are starting to come back, not as quickly as residential values have since the downturn in 08-09. Our median value's up almost $330,000 residentially on a median single-family home. And that's been increasing steadily the last 4 or 5 years. When I came here 6 years ago, I believe it was 87,000, and now we're at 329. So in the last 5 years, it's steadily going up. Yeah.
Just a theory question along those lines. We're going to be adding the school to the levy. And at some point, I think it's like 5 million or 4 million will be added to the total towards our levy for the override per year. If valuations come down over time and we get closer to the maximum cap, because you ever see that happening, or you think we have enough room in there that will never get to the top?
I'd never say never as an assessor, but I don't see that happening in the near future.
And I know obviously that assumes a zero new growth, but do you pretty much foresee some new growth in your crystal ball, at least in the immediate future?
Yes, I mean, there are a lot of projects in line. We have, for instance, I'm working now on the fiscal 18 growth, I mean, the valuation of the properties, not the actual putting together of the growth, but the initial phases of that are measuring the properties, taking the photos, reporting, working with the building department, getting figures and doing the inspections and all. But for fiscal 18, we're going to have, an increase in growth over fiscal 17. I know that. We have the Taj Estates project that just began construction this year. We had Sonic that came in. We have, there's a few things,
That are in the works?
in the pipeline. The hotel is the major one
That's
for
the major
fiscal
one.
18.
19?
Fiscal 18, we picked up about 50%.
About half of it?
It was 50% complete as of January 1st, roughly. And things keep going, we'll have the other 50% next year. So half of it in 18, we'll get the other half in fiscal 19. So things are moving. The Goddard Highlands subdivision was going gangbusters for a couple years. They slowed down for the last 2 years, and now they're supposed to be starting up again this year for fiscal 19. So
All
I
right.
see decent growth there. One thing I do bring up at the classification hearing, and I'll bring it up now since I'm here, the 12 TIFs we have are finite in the number of years, and most of those started in the 2000s, in the early, 2000s, and they're 20-year TIFs for the most part.
Just to remind everybody, a TIF agreement is a reduction of
Tax
personal
increment.
property over a certain number of years, and you get a break, and then it comes back on the tax rolls.
Yeah. But,
In the tax revenue when those expire.
Yes, correct. So what's going to happen, starting in maybe 5 or 6 years, is that will count as growth, that percentage that we were exempting. But the negative is, as with all this stuff, there's pros and cons, the negative is the MWRA fund is not going to be receiving those monies anymore,
Which affects the water fund, so.
which will affect the water and sewer rates.
Right.
So,
So, it is what it is.
yeah.
All right, and that's it. Everybody got any questions? Okay, got off easy, Joe.
Thank you.